Sally?
Okay, sure. Hold on. Hold on a second.
So my question, Araceli, is, and you're recording this now, we will also like to put the recording of the presentations up. But I'm not sure we need to have the CRC portion in there. I'm not sure it matters, but you know what I mean?
So what I can do is I can stop the recording right after we approve the minutes and then
Restart it.
restart it, I guess.
But I think it'll still be in the same Zoom, so I'm not sure you'll get two separate recordings.
Yeah, I have never edited a video, so I don't know what, I mean, if
We'll
someone,
figure it out.
Yeah.
someone could help
And
us.
when we are uploading that for the public access, I can trim it. I can
Okay.
edit it and edit out the CRC portion of it.
So just keep the recording going. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
I will
And
trim it.
can you record as well, Rose, just in case? I mean, I'm always nervous about it. Can you?
No, can
Since,
I?
since you are the co-host?
Only the host can record?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Yvette.
You're welcome.
So did Michael Miller is representing Rosa Gutman or the School of Spitzer School of Architecture?
Yes.
Because Rosa won't be able to come in today or to be in today. So
Hi, Araceli, nice to see you.
By the way, Araceli,
Yes.
is there any waiting rooms for this meeting or
no,
everybody sign in and then come in?
no, yes.
Okay.
So I know Ilona said she wasn't able to make it today. Anybody else not from the CRC not available?
Besides, Martha Gutman is the only one that sent me a message. So I
But
guess the
Micah-
rest will be here.
So Maria, are you representing Carmen for the CRC?
Probably, but well,
Okay, we're just trying to
No,
make sure.
I
We're just
get it.
trying to make sure we have a quorum here.
the problem is that I can only be here for the first one because I'm double booked.
No, I mean for the CRC, because we need a quorum to approve the minutes.
Oh, I can do that right now.
Yeah, we almost have a quorum. Hold on a second. I'm checking.
So for that, I can do that.
Great.
But I'll leave after the first presentation because I have to do a presentation myself.
Busy summer for us all.
I'm telling you, that's all I can say, Rose.
So Araceli, let's see. I see 1, 2,
Seven,
7.
including me, yes. So,
Did you count Maria for Carmen?
yes, I did. I did.
So that's 7 out of 12.
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, correct.
And how many voting members?
12.
No, we don't, no. I mean,
Yes,
so the voting members that are here, are those 7?
yes, 7.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So since we, hi, good afternoon. My name is Araceli Tinajero. I'm chair of the College Research Council. The council meets throughout the year, and we also have summer meetings. And today is one of our meetings. So we are taking this opportunity to present the College Research Vision Project. So since this is a meeting, an actual meeting, we are going to begin with the approval of the minutes. So this is the first business in order, the approval of the minutes of the May 11th minutes. So could you please take a look at them and let me know if you are in favor, or those opposed say no, please.
I think it's fine.
Anyone?
I was just gonna think he's.
Should we move to approve the minutes? Yes.
Motion to approve?
Okay.
I have one minor correction.
He
Yes,
has
go
like
ahead.
Riz, but like he just doesn't use it. Okay?
Excuse me, Akira, can you mute?
So how do you play this?
Kawaguchi sensei, onegaishimasu.
What the fuck is this, bro?
Yes, yes, Professor Wasako.
I am not an associate professor anymore. Thanks to you, I am a full professor now. Please make the correction.
Oh, yes,
That's it.
yes, and I did make that correction in the past. I apologize.
Okay.
No, it's not thanks to me. It's thanks to you, all your hard work. So yes, anything else? No? Okay, so if there are no further corrections, we will move to approve the minutes. So the next item in today's, the next business in order will be the presentations of the College Research Vision. So Dean Weston, go ahead.
So I'm going to share my screen here. And in the next minute, I'm going to try to introduce this subject. So we've got a lot to cover in the next 2 hours, and we're going to try to stay on schedule. So let me just first introduce myself. I'm Rose Wesson. I'm the Associate Provost for Research, and thank you everyone for coming to this presentation. This includes the CRC, which is the College Research Council members, plus it's open to the City College community, City College of New York community. So thank you everyone for coming. We have 4 presentations today, and we'll have another 4 presentations at the end of July. But just to put everybody on the same page, the sessions will be recorded. The sessions will be available on the recordings will be available on the CRV website, on the CCNY website. If you just type in CRV, you can find the CRV website. The slides are available in the Dropbox for the CRC members. The slides are available on the website for the City College community. We're going to ask that you put all questions into the chat. We may not have time to address all of them, but that will give us a written record and we can respond to them after the meeting. So please put all the questions in the chat. I will be controlling the slides. So I have all the presentations here and I will move through the slides. Remember, presenters, you have 20 minutes and that will allow 5 to 10 minutes for questions. CRC members, if you're on a team, you're welcome to attend all of the presentations. We just ask that you do not vote on the presentation or on the team or on the proposal of which you are a member. So I'll go into that a little bit more in detail. But right now, you're welcome to attend all of the presentations. And CRC members, if you have a few minutes after 3, after we go through all the presentations, if you can stick around, we'll answer additional questions at that time relative to the CRC. But if you're not available, that's okay. We'll get back in touch with you. All right, I'm at 107. Ashuel, take it away.
And for all the participants, please mute your mic if you are not a presenter. And I will give a 5 minutes warning before the 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Ashuel, you're up.
Okay. Thank you very much, College Research Council, for inviting the IHED team for this final or near final stage of the CRV process. And thanks to Associate Provost Wesson for guiding the process through, especially for the strategic doing workshops that were very helpful in helping to build team spirit as well as strategy. The CRV initiative itself is very welcome, and we think it's a significant step forward toward building research productivity and impact at CCNY. The IHED team is pleased to lead off this last stage of the process. Next slide. The IHED team consists of 14 faculty from 6 different schools. The expertise of the faculty is reflected in this slide. I will not go through the details, but suffice it to say that each member of the team has unique strengths and abilities to contribute to the success of the IHED program. Next. The IHED program is Artificial Intelligence for Health, Equity, and Diversity. The framing question that captures our imagination is how individual and community health could be impacted if artificial intelligence were introduced into healthcare and wellness. And not just that they were introduced, but they were introduced in such a way that they effect an inclusive and equitable impact. Next slide. Next, thank you. So artificial intelligence for health, equity, and diversity arose out of our understanding of several problems that led up to this. The first realization was the fact that artificial intelligence, or AI, is the foundation of the 4th industrial revolution. The 4th industrial revolution is an era that has dawned upon us when machines make decisions on behalf of human beings. And we find that AI strategies are being embedded into nearly every aspect of life, and there's more to come. And the impact of this could be spectacular in how it improves our quality of life, or it could be disastrous. Secondly, in the area of healthcare, AI has not made significant impacts across the board yet, but AI strategies are increasingly being implemented in the area of diagnostics, imaging, and care planning. And we see that this is only bound to increase in the future. There is massive amounts of data from electronic health records, EHR rather than HER, electronic health records, personal digital assistants, social and environmental determinants of health. And this data needs to be captured and utilized to improve individual and community health. In the systems that are building so far, there is a lack of data diversity. We find that there are certain groups in the society and certain communities that are excluded completely from these databases, and others may be included, but their inclusion is not in a fair manner such that they would stand to benefit from the outcomes of these systems. So there is need to increase data diversity that's feeding into these systems. Interestingly, it's just this past week that one of the major companies, Microsoft, decided that going forward, they are going to focus on data diversity. Otherwise, so far, that has not been a value or a goal to be pursued. There is also lack of personnel diversity in the AI field. And if individuals from certain communities are not represented among those at the table, then chances are there is going to be an increasing risk of creating and perpetuating harmful biases in AI algorithms. Some of these biases are not necessarily intentional, but individuals may just not be aware. And so having good representation at the table is important. So overall, we think that CCNY should play a leading role in equitable AI, because that's part of our values as an institution, and also because we have the innate capability, the core capabilities to do that. We just need to mobilize and organize those capabilities directed at certain endpoints. Next slide. So the objectives of our initiative are threefold, maybe fourfold, in the sense that we desire to use data from electronic health records, from social determinants of health, from environmental determinants of health, and go through a set of three objectives that will help us establish two things. One, we want to learn by doing, to establish the strategies for collecting and debiasing and diversifying data that is being fed into AI systems, especially for health purposes. And secondly, we want to demonstrate strategies for creating algorithms, AI algorithms that are inclusive and transparent, so that they can be improved, so that their impact and processes can be subject to academic inquiry like any other scientific area. And then thirdly, we want to demonstrate that AI devices can be built using innovative technologies such that they can be affordable, accessible to all, without having to cost the businesses to go out of business. And in doing this, we are going to include a fourth factor, which is the community component. We are going to engage the communities, particularly communities that are hitherto disadvantaged or marginalized. We are going to include these communities in the process of conceiving the research, in the process of data collection, as well as in the process of testing our devices, our outcomes, as well as deploying the final devices, so that we don't develop a project or a device in isolation and then impose it on the community, but we learn from the communities how to go about this, so that at the end of the day, they feel a part of it and misconceptions are minimized, and the devices themselves are effective and used.
I can give them without even looking at it.
Next slide. So the intellectual merits and broader impacts of this strategy are fairly obvious. We know that AI is creating landscape changes in every endeavor, and healthcare it's slower to come in, partly because of the fact that health is involved, and there are a number of regulations in that area, for example, HIPAA regulations. And so it's not just an area you'd ask about just about anybody to jump in and play with the data. And so that has been slow in coming. However, it's coming along. And as I mentioned earlier, one of our concerns is that even as it is coming along, the data that is feeding and informing these systems is not representing all the groups that we think ought to be at the table. The AI revolution itself is, okay, I'm not seeing all of the slide, is a problem. Thank you. And then the IHET team at CCNY is made up of researchers that are experts in their field. They are broad in terms of their range of expertise, interdisciplinary. Some are experts in AI, some medical science, some in social and environmental determinants of health. And as we come together, we are going to build cohesive capacity. We are going to demonstrate the feasibility of our ideas, and we are also going to disseminate these ideas to have a broader impact. So in terms of broader impact, we will establish workflows that can be used by others for inclusive, curated, debiased multimodal data for health in AI. We are going to create sample algorithms that address various components of developing AI for diagnostic purposes, for treatment planning, and so on, so that others can see that it can be done, and they would use some of those routines and incorporate them into their own algorithms. And then thirdly, we are going to demonstrate that a device can be created using innovative technology and fashioned in such a way that with community input, it will be accessible, it will be usable, and it will be impactful. And then at the end, we would also like to see that CCNY earns the capabilities and infrastructure to conduct AI research, not only for health, but also with applications in other areas of interest, such as education, security, and so on. Next slide. So our technical approach. So for each of the core areas, we have 4 cores, three main cores, and the 4th core that permeates each of the others. The first core is data, the second is algorithms, the third is devices, and the 4th is community. So our strategy for addressing the first core, data sourcing, curation, and pipeline, will be as follows. 1, we want to make it clear what our premise is going into this. Now, there are a lot of different institutions and groups out there that are attempting to apply AI to health. And there are certain values, certain hypotheses that we bring to the table that are not yet part of the conversation. And our premise is going to highlight some of this. So in the area of, or in the core of data sourcing, curation, and pipelining, our premise is that AI systems can be biased based on the system design, as well as the diversity, quality, range, and coding of data fed into the system. This needs to be recognized. If we assume that collecting 1 million data points is 1 million data points, irrespective of where it comes from, we are going to come out with algorithms and outputs that are going to be biased and may not be usable to a wide swath of the community. So we want to recognize this starting out and then come up with strategies to deal with the challenge, so that what we end up with eventually is indeed meeting the goal. So we are going to link up to data streams and explore for bias, identify bias, come up with workflows to address bias, to eliminate bias. We are going to look at ways to diversify the data, identify communities that have so far been excluded, and figure out strategies to bring those communities into the mainstream. We are going to develop use cases that will include efficacy of remediation efforts. And we are going to prototype this or demonstrate this using indoor air quality data to be developed by our colleagues working in that area. And then at the end of the day, we are going to see how all of these modalities can be integrated in a holistic way, so that when decisions are being made, not only are we not including certain communities, not only are we not including certain types of individuals, we are also not excluding certain types of data that should come in to make a more complete decision-making. So at the end of it all, we are going to explore, develop, validate, and disseminate strategies for standardizing the collection, labeling, and use of AI training data. And I did not highlight it before, but it was mentioned earlier that what comes out of the AI system depends on what goes in. The data that go in are critical. They determine what is going to come out, garbage in, garbage out. And then the algorithms, which are the computer code that process this data, are important. And then the outcomes themselves need to be labeled in a way that makes sense. What you see coming out is not what the machine determined. What comes out is based on the dictionary that human beings give the machine to use. So if the individual, if a human being tells the machine that whenever you see a 2, label it this way, that is what the machine is going to do. And so we don't have to be scared of AI. because AI is determined by human beings. On the other hand, we need to make sure that the humans who provide these dictionaries for the labeling, who feed this data into the machine and determine what data goes in and determine how the data is manipulated. Those humans are accountable and responsible for what the AI system does. Next slide. We are going to develop algorithms, and in that area, we have some of our faculty, our team members that are going to take the lead. Dr. Wei is the lead in that area, and other participants are Professors Kawaguchi, Fu, Kim, Seo, and Zhu. And the premise in our approach to algorithm is that the brains of AI are the algorithms that process the data. These are the human prescribed code. And the labels that interpret the outputs, these are the human provided dictionaries. And so humans determine AI ethics. And we are going to therefore approach our system knowing that we have to focus not only in gathering millions of data points, not only in coming out with code that processes within minutes, but to pay attention to the human factors and the ethical factors in this.
5 minutes.
Okay. And at the end, we will come out with code that demonstrates these various components to show that it can be done. And then another aspect that this core is going to address is to test and prove that neuromorphic photonic technology can in fact accelerate AI processing beyond what the current GPU systems can do. And this is going to be done by our core C. They will design and devise the technology, and then our core B will provide the proof that in fact it is performing according to specs. Next slide. In core C, we will design and develop a technology based on AI that can be applied in the cardiovascular field for disease diagnosis, called the laser Doppler vibrometer. This does not exist, and we have the capabilities to do that within our team. And by using information from data gathered in core A, using algorithms from core B, this system is going to be enhanced so that it performs better within a diversity of communities. And then secondly, we are going to look to build a photonic neuromorphic computing device that will accelerate AI processing and feedback to enhance our algorithms. Next slide. Community outreach is going to be a component of the process from beginning to end. We are going to identify stakeholders from multiple communities that will inform every stage of the process. We are going to have a community advisory board, and then we will conduct design studies among the community to ensure that their voice is heard, their concerns are addressed, and their input is incorporated into our processes and thinking. And we believe that by bringing together scientists, clinicians, and the community in this way, we will come up with strategies that will not only be technically feasible, but also acceptable within communities where they will be applied. Next slide. Our milestones are graded. They are designed in such a way that by the end of the first year, we have built strong teams and we have collected data that will set us on course to begin to approach both writing presentations, research proposals, at the same time as we approach the second half of the project. Next slide. These are our team members. We have seen them previously, and their qualifications are adequate to address each of the cores that we would be pursuing. Next slide. Our management plan will consist of 3 levels. The research team as a whole, all 14 members, are going to participate in policy decisions. The cores are going to carry out core level activities, report back to the team, and we confer together to inform and advise on what is going on at each core. There will be an executive committee that comprises the PI and each of the 4 core leaders, and they will be responsible for the day-to-day management of the project. And then we will establish an external advisory board comprised of experts from different fields that will help us with the strategy, planning, and implementation and outreach of the project as we go along to make sure that we are placing our project within the context of the broader intellectual field of AI and health. Next slide. Our future funding prospects and self-sustaining plan. We expect to establish a cohesive scientific team as quickly as possible. We will develop pilot data and use cases and innovative concepts that will then form the basis for us to submit research grant proposals. We have identified potential opportunities within New York State National Institutes of Health, Science Foundation, DOD, DOE. So there is a lot of opportunity out there we can approach once we have our foundations together. We recently submitted a $48 million grant to NIH, and we were reviewed and we rose to the stage of interview. And we know the two things that we were deficient in, and we would be able to address those within the first half of this initiative. We also expect that we will come up with patents as we go along, and such patents could be developed or licensed out, which will bring in additional income to keep the project and the initiative going for years to come. And at the end, if CCNY does become a recognized center of research in AI applications, not only for health, but for other areas, then that itself will become a strengthening factor as we go out seeking for additional support from federal agencies or from foundations. Next slide. Thank you.
Round the mark.
Thank you.
Questions? We have questions, Alan?
Not on the chat yet.
So I'm going to ask a question, Ashwell. How and just where are we based on what you're proposing? What is the state of the art? Who's competing with us? Who else is doing this kind of research? And why are we better positioned than where they are?
There are a lot of players in the field of AI and health. In fact, just before I came on, Stanford sent out a meeting announcement on AI and health. There are a lot of players in the field, not only from academic institutions, but also from corporations. IBM has a health unit, Google has one, Microsoft, Amazon, and so on. What we bring on the table is a couple of things. One, we have a broad diversity of participants from different fields, not just from data science and AI. So we can think more broadly in terms of how we apply the technology to address a wider range of issues. And secondly, we are bringing into this as a primary consideration, equity and diversity. These other companies do not have that as a primary consideration. The person who was trying to raise that at Google got fired. And only last week, Microsoft said they are going to begin to consider equity as a factor. And I think we are in a position to do this better than anybody else, given our history, given our values as an institution. And if I may ask, if I may, seize the moment to ask my colleagues, Professors Way and Madamopoulos, if you would like to chip in, please do, since we still have a few minutes for questions.
Can we make comments, Rose, or are we waiting?
Yep, you can make comments.
Yeah, I would just like to say that this is very well aligned with the work we're trying to do around translation and commercialization. And I think it also has the benefit of aligning with our wish to serve our region very directly. So this use-inspired, looking directly at your region and what its needs are and addressing those as an institution. I think that's close to the mission of the institution. And it feels like something that I could be supportive of. So anyway, I like what I see with this. So that's a comment more than a question, but I like it. So
thank you very much.
So we got a few minutes, so let me ask something else, Ashwell. There are a lot of players here, which is great, but there are a lot of members of the team. And you divided it up nicely in terms of the actual cores you're going after. But is there enough funding here for all of those folks, or how do you see the budget being split?
Right. As I mentioned, we had previously submitted a proposal to NIH. And in the process of working up that proposal, we identified where the foundation is to get us started, going forward. And when we looked at the budget and we looked at all the things we would like to do, we realized that if we start taking salaries, for example, summer salaries, we may not be able to accomplish certain things. So all of us unanimously agreed to take just $1 for summer salary and move most of the money into enabling us to build the foundation that we need to build. And later on, if we get a $48 million grant, we would all be able to take full salaries if we want to at that point.
You mean when you get the 58 million?
Sure.
All right, any other comments, questions, concerns? If not, thank you, Ashwell, thank you, team. And we're gonna move on to team 4, which is the wastewater recovery. Water resource recovery. Is this Spilos?
It is.
Okay. Okay, we can start with the first slide.
Is this the first slide?
Yes,
Okay, we're ready.
yeah. How do we do this thing,
So I am controlling the slide, you just control the verbiage.
Right, then there will be 4 speakers. So I'm gonna speak for the first 4 minutes and then we'll pass on, okay?
Great.
So I don't see the slides. I only see the small. Does everybody can see everybody sees the slide or what?
Does anybody else?
I can see.
You can see it.
Good.
So why don't you pull up your slides so that you can see them? The slides you sent to us, and then just let me know when to change them.
Okay. So then, all right. Basically, what I would like to do is to give you a little background on the project that we're proposing by first talk about the wastewater treatment, and then I will pass it on to my other members who will focus on the water resource recovery. Basically, for some of you who may not really realize it, but the city of New York generates about 1.3 billion gallons of wastewater that are treated in 14 different wastewater treatment plants. What you see on this slide is a picture of the wastewater treatment plant that is located on Wards Island, and it treats the wastewater from the upper East Manhattan, the lower Bronx, Randall's Island, and Wards Island. These facilities basically are wastewater treatment because what they are doing, they are focusing on a treatment process that will have a treated effluent that is going to be discharged into the receiving waters, whether the Hudson or the East River and so far, that will sustain the water quality that will support fishable, swimmable waters. Every plant gets a discharge permit from the state of New York, and the facility itself is designed mainly to destroy contaminants rather than recovery. So up to now, we were talking about destructive processes to protect the receiving water. In the process, you produce a lot of biosolids, a lot of sludge that is produced that has to be handled. So to give you a kind of historical timeline, the sewer systems that bring in the wastewater to the treatment plants, they actually began construction back in the 1850s. Wastewater treatment plants first appeared in the 1890s to 1900s. And if you look at the gap, there was a 50-year period where the wastewater was discharging directly into the receiving waters. that phase, sometimes I refer to it in my class, is the solution to pollution by dilution. In other words, we just dump the wastewater into the East River and we let dilution do the magic. Well, that is not a sustainable process. So eventually everybody realized that the water has to be treated, and the treatment process that were selected initially, one of the first plants was in Coney Island. And the last plant was in 1886, which was here in the North River, just across the way from the City College. So the emphasis was to protect the water quality, okay? The sludge now, what do you do? Well, the sludge up to 1988 was dumped into the ocean. There was a designated site where the sludge was barged into that site and discharged into the ocean. Again, the solution to pollution, dilution. That also did not last very long until there was a ban on dumping. And at that point, the city of New York had to dig water and find a land-based alternative. Unfortunately, the land-based alternative turned out to be landfilling. Well, this is also a non-sustainable kind of a process. So what now has happened, and not only in New York City, but in major cities throughout the world, we have rebranded wastewater treatment to water resource recovery. In other words, in lieu of destructive processes, we want to have a recovery process where we can recover the energy, we can recover the nutrients, we can recover the water from the wastewater as needed, okay? So we're looking for valuable components that can be recovered, that have a market value, that you have a sustainable process that you work with. So if we go to the second slide, imagine if New York view waste as a valuable resource rather than a problem, and use waste to bring sustainable benefits to a range of people. What would you look like? So I myself and my group have been working with wastewater treatment processes for a long time. This is a new ball game for us. It's a resource recovery approach. And here we reach out and identify people who have an interest to work with us to develop a resource recovery plan. And we have people in sustainability, we have people in fluids, air quality, in modeling, energy management, economics. And this team basically is going to be the core that will begin to develop options for resource recovery rather than this destructive process that we've been using all along. And I will pass it now to my next speaker, which is Alex Rosenthal, who is going to look at the basically the recovery aspect of the biosolids. Alex?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Filos. So the question is, how do we shift from wasting biosolids, which in the case of New York City means disposal at out-of-state landfills, and shift our city to a practice of recovery and beneficial use? First, we need to identify and maximize valuable uses for biosolids. In a sense, what is our capacity to reuse the 1,200 tons of biosolids that are generated in the city each day? And to give a sense of scale, 1,200 tons per day is equivalent to covering all of Central Park with 5 inches of biosolids each year. It requires nearly 40,000 dump truck loads each year that contribute to traffic, air emissions, and wear and tear on our streets. And we do this at an annual landfill disposal cost of roughly $50 million. What we propose is that there are several important city and regional initiatives that would be supported through a biosolids application program. Biosolids are a soil conditioner and fertilizer and could be applied for park and green space expansion, the creation of bioswales to manage stormwater, the restoration of coastal areas, application for horticulture and agricultural purposes, and many other activities that would make the city and region greener. It's worth noting that beneficial application of biosolids is not new. The use of human waste as fertilizer is as old as civilization itself. And biosolids land application is regulated at the federal level. New York City currently applies technologies that produce what are called Class B biosolids, which you can land apply with some restrictions, but they have such a low value that it's cheaper and simpler to dispose of it in landfills. So what we need is to expand the possibilities of what can be made from biosolids. With additional processing, we can generate what are called Class A exceptional quality biosolids or biosolids derived products. And these have fewer use restrictions and are deemed more acceptable and valuable to the public. So one of these technologies is being evaluated by one of our team members, Marco Castaldi, in the chemical engineering department. And it's a hydrothermal processing technology applied to organic waste, and it produces a sterilized soil conditioner called hydrochar. And it also produces recoverable fractions of volatile organic compounds and hydrogen gas. But this technology hasn't been studied yet on municipal biosolids. And so one of our initial focus areas will be to evaluate the feasibility and desirability of this hydrothermal processing technology and compare it to other technologies under consideration by the city. What we also must do is consider how biosolids recovery and reuse fits into our community and infrastructure. Water resource recovery in general, and biosolids management in particular, is capital intensive. It exerts a significant environmental impact, and often it doesn't smell very good. So we need the expertise of many of our team members to determine how to best implement a recovery program that aligns with the city's broader sustainability goals and minimizes the negative environmental impacts associated with organic waste processing. Determining the demand, regulatory environment, and public acceptance of biosolids are also of crucial importance. And later in the presentation, Krish Ramalingam will summarize the strategic management approaches to navigate these combined challenges. And finally, we have to answer the question as to whether biosolids are safe. Contaminants of concern that are known to partition to biosolids during sludge treatment include heavy metals, perfluoroalkyl substances known as PFAS, personal care products, and pharmaceuticals. In particular, PFAS has emerged as a contaminant of concern due to its persistence in the environment and human health risks. The participation of team member Urs Jans from the chemistry department to analyze PFAS in biosolids, its potential for transformation and mobilization during biosolids processing and application is also a necessary component of this effort. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for your attention and turn the presentation over to Jeffrey Morris, who will discuss the flow and rheological characteristics of biosolids, which is also a crucial aspect of our proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, I'm Jeff Morris from the Levitch Institute and Chemical Engineering. And this is a problem that is worldwide. I've been aware of this problem through interactions with colleagues in Australia, in Europe, in Southeast Asia. And the question, therefore, that we can really attack in New York City as a test bed then is globally transferable. And I think this is a way we can have a major impact. So here, however, what I'm going to talk about is getting into the details of what we have to understand to make this happen. So I'm going to talk about it from the perspective that you have a microscopic structure of a material that gives rise to macroscopic properties. So a fundamental perspective in the science of the problem that then allows us to understand how to do process scale flow optimization. So let me take you down to the lower right on this slide where it says the process scale fluid mechanics. And this is important to realize from the picture that was shown at the beginning by Professor Philos. This is a large scale process. And so just in a very simplified diagram here, you see that you have a number of what we call unit operations in chemical engineering, but you have then these settlers from which the material that is settled is gathered into a digester. And then the digester material, that is the sludge, goes on to be dewatered. And there's biogas, and then the biosolids are at least two products which can be taken from this material. But this process is subject to changes due to regulation that can change, and because the input stream, of course, is somewhat variable. So understanding what's really going on with the material and having access to that, the ability to model that, means going and trying to understand at the microscopic level what the material is actually like. And so if you go to the upper left, you see that there's an untreated sludge. And then Alex mentioned the thermally hydrolyzed materials. You can see that at the microscopic level here at the tens of microns level, these are different materials. And that means that they interact, the objects interact differently and give you different properties. And so if you look at the images to the right, you might not be able to see what's very different except for a bit of color about them. But these materials actually have significantly different properties. And understanding that at the microscopic level, using imaging, using force measurements, understanding the chemical effects on this, something that couples in with things that Professor Jans can address, gives us the ability then to have the material properties that we can model and that we can couple back to our understanding of the microscale. And I think this is the evolution of bringing in this level of science to the microscale to give us the properties that you're seeing at the upper right, which tell me that it's much easier to flow the thermally hydrolyzed material. These both look about like ketchup. If you look at the left there, that's at a certain level of solids. But as we try to go to a reduced water, that is a higher fraction of solids, these materials become essentially unflowable. And then the question is, how do we handle them? What is the process by which we're going to deal with these? And is there a way that we can maintain flowability of the material? So these are some of the questions, and it all comes back to the fact that in order to be adaptable, to be optimizable in the process, we really have to understand the material scientifically at the microscopic level and carry that over to modeling approaches. So let me hand this off now. Thank you very much.
5 minutes.
Thank you, Jeff. And this is Krish Ramalingam from Civil Engineering. What you see on the screen right now is a shift away from the technological aspects that you have seen in the last few slides to look at the business, the economic, and the social perspectives of biosolids. Remember, there is a NIMBY problem with biosolids. There is a stigma attached to biosolids, but there's an immense opportunity here to make use of the biosolids that are there. So this is a slide that was put together by Mehdi Samimi, our economics guru of the group. And unfortunately, he's on the phone. He's not here because he's tending to a newborn baby. So let's look at the metrics that we are going to be using to look at the biosolids for the business, economic, and social perspectives. One is technology comparison. So what is technology comparison? We are looking at the triple bottom line, the economic dimension, the social dimension, the ecological dimension. So these are things that, any technology that you pick up will have to satisfy, is this a sustainable process? And is this something that is beneficial to the city, to the citizens? And so that technology comparison has to be done, and you pick up different technologies and you start comparing it, because sustainable strategy is a strategy that can be pursued over time without detrimental effects on people and the planet. So you could pick up different technologies, but you will have to see whether those technologies are applicable to your use, site specific. So that's where the technology comparison issue comes in. And then you look at the technology management. You have different alternatives here. So we will treat these alternatives as different technologies. And you start looking at the life cycle analysis of these and the types of innovations involved in the project. So you have a technology, and then you start looking at different technologies and how those technologies are managed. But all of this put together has to be agreeable to the stakeholder. The stakeholder portion of this is very important because they are finally the users of this technology. Whether it's going to be the city, whether it's going to be New York City, whether it's going to be Netherlands, it's going to be any city in the world. They have to be satisfied that this is a process that can be used beneficially to their application. And so we have to identify, when we go through this process, who our stakeholders are, what are their interests and claims, and what are the opportunities that we can give to our stakeholders, and what are the economic, legal, and ethical issues that will come up of this, and how do we address these issues. So these are things that become very important when you start looking at biosolids valorization pathways. The biosolids that the city generates is humongous. So it's a humongous opportunity for us to get into a position where we can develop a technology, develop the modalities, develop a vehicle for City College to be the core for the city as the test bed, and City College being the on the driver's seat on this. Next slide. Okay, so you have seen in over the past few slides the different aspects of biosolids and what we are trying to do with, whether it's going to be with viscosity, whether it's going to be with pyrolysis, whether it's going to be with energy extraction. So, you know, this in an analogy, this is like different people looking at different parts of an elephant. You know, somebody is looking at the tusk, somebody is looking at the legs, somebody is looking at the tail, and they just focus on that. But the elephant is a big animal. You have to step back, and as I said, this is a 1,200 ton per day elephant that we are looking at, and the opportunity to handle this elephant is there in front of us. We just have to hold the tusks and lead the way. So
1 minute warning.
Okay, so what do we do? So what we want to do is to have an advisory committee that will be consisting of stakeholders and utilities and industry, who will be our bouncing board. We'll bounce the ideas off them, and simultaneously at the beginning of the process, we'll start proof of concept studies. These proof of concept studies will take all of these different items that we have spelled out, and we'll continue developing data. And as we go into year 2 of this, we hope to have enough data to start publishing. And we also start thinking about a biosolids regional workshop where we'll bring in all the important guys, the stakeholders, the concerned citizens, because this is you have to hash it out to get something that is really useful. Remember, this is, you're talking about supply side, there's no problem. Each one of us poop every day. So there's no supply side issues here. There's a lot of biosolids that you're going to generate every day. And it's literally, guys, toilet to gas tanks, or toilets to plastics, or toilets to energy is what we're talking about here. So you must have seen this ad many times. Your number 2 is our number 1 business, is what the industry says. And this is exactly what we are trying to tell, is that we are in a position where we can really focus and get this going for the city. And this will be an example for the rest of the world if we can really get it through. And lastly, transitioning to a circular economy is recognized as a critical element of sustainable urban growth. New York City's water resource recovery infrastructure provides this opportunity to convert what was once considered as waste. With that, thank you.
So let me ask, you referred a little bit to regulations. Can somebody speak a little bit more about that and to how that will impact the research and success of the research?
Okay, I don't know, I'll take a crack at it first, and then maybe anyone else can jump in. We are in a brand new area. We have to educate the regulators. We are doing a lot of things that the regulators are way behind. So regulations are going to be there, but eventually when we start putting all of these new technologies into practice, we will have to sit across with the regulators. The city authorities will have to sit across with the state regulators and educate them. And it's going to be a learning process for the regulators also. So we hope at some point to get regulators on board and get this going so that it's beneficial for the city and for its citizens. You know, you're talking about 60 truckloads that are going out every day to transfer stations and onto rail cars into landfills. The amount of congestion on city streets, the amount of GHG emissions, all of that are issues that will be brought forward with the regulators on this.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I have one question regarding the solid that you produced. How did you deal with the toxicity or harmful chemicals within the solids?
Alan, what is your question?
So when you produce, you treat the waters or the sludge into solids, and how do you deal with the toxicities inside the solids, the harmful chemicals?
No, remember, this is these plants, they treat domestic wastewater primarily. we don't have much industry within the city of New York. It doesn't mean that the sludge is clean. It has contaminants, but rarely at concentrations that really create a problem. Now, a lot of these biosolids is basically bacteria that grew on organic material that was in the wastewater. So there's a lot of biomass that is present, so the handling, the dewatering, these becomes engineering problems. But so far from the data that I have seen with the city, city biosolids are relatively of low pathogenic contaminants present. Okay, there are heavy metals, but not at the concentrations that will really inhibit the utilization of these biosolids.
Alex, you want to comment on that?
I would generally say that the contaminant levels, whether it's heavy metals or organics or pathogens, in biosolids that are treated to Class A exceptional quality are comparable to any other organic soil amendment that you buy in a gardening store. So really, this is more about the perception that this is human waste and therefore undesirable. But on any measurable basis, it's comparable to things that we use widely in commercial settings, and federal regulations match that assertion. When something reaches Class A exceptional quality, it's suitable for the home garden, the city park, and all sorts of other applications where there's human traffic.
Thank you.
There are some concerns about emerging contaminants like PFAS that was brought up, but this is something that is part of the research that HRSS will do with us to find out what are the levels and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So there's work to be done on that, but there's emerging contaminants that's going to be continuously there, and that will be a challenge, and that we'll work on.
Can you, I'm trying to get back to the slide. Can you say a little bit more about how, so we see the 4 different areas. Can you say a little bit more about how your team is working together?
Well, the team, basically, the way we're going to function, run this thing is, if you look at the budget, is that we are basically proposing that there will be some proof of concept kind of experiments, mini experiments. And the way we have thought about it is to do some preliminary testing, to get some basic data that we're going to be using to be the basis for outside funding. So basically, also, the funding that was available, is very small. It's almost, trivial. But we're going to try to use it as a leverage to get some additional funding from the city agencies to address specific kind of questions. To give you an example, rheology is a very challenging problem that the city is facing in some of these processes right now, especially the fermenters. So I can see how we can take the money that's available from the CRV and try to make a case with DEP to get some supplemental funding so we can do a reasonable kind of experiment. And I think, there will be people like Urs, for example, who's going to be looking at the analytical aspects, Jeff is going to be looking probably at rheology. Marco is looking at the, basically the thermal processes as they apply to sludge. So these things have been really worked out. We know how to proceed.
So Hillary and Professor Samimi?
Right, he's going to do the economics.
So we've got a lot of science and engineering here. We've got the other.
Well, it's an engineering problem.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, I do want to comment that there's also a significant component of trying to make sure that the not in my backyard issues are addressed as well. And so understanding the environmental impact and trying to minimize this is a significant effort in terms of, that we have some expertise in the air quality management. And I think that the general question of trying to identify the markets and to find these is a central part that is sort of a key point in the discussions.
Great. Okay, any other questions, concerns, comments before we move on?
Nothing on the chat.
Team number 2. Who's the lead, Al?
That would be Bruce.
Bruce, you ready?
You are muted.
Hi, thanks for attending. My name is Bruce Cronin. I'm in the Department of Political Science. I'm the principal investigator for mitigating the effects of war on vulnerable populations. And what we have on the opening screen here are the 4 vulnerable populations who are considered protected classes under international law, national policy, diplomatic practice. In the top left, you see refugees carrying their children from bombed out cities. To the right, you see a soldier who's clearly suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Below them are refugees, that is people who have to leave their country, they're forced migrants to leave their country due to war. And to the left is what we call internally displaced, women carrying all of her belongings and her dog. She's not leaving the country, but she has to leave her community due to the effects of the war. Next. So the question that's animating this project is how can governments and international organizations better protect the security and mental health of civilians, refugees, displaced persons, and wounded soldiers during armed conflict? Next. Okay, so what are the problems? Generally, the first thing to note is there's more than 40 interstate conflicts and civil wars being fought in every region of the world. And this includes both the major powers and the smaller states in Africa, Europe, Latin America, Asia. The real change that's occurred over the last 10 years is that advancements in military technology have increased the detrimental effects on civilians, wounded soldiers, and displaced migrants. In 2002 alone, and it's only July, 100 million people have been forced to flee their homes due to war. And 15% of soldiers in the latest survey demonstrate that they're experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. This doesn't include the tens of thousands of soldiers who have been maimed and hurt. Some are paraplegics. One of the problems being that medical science has advanced to save the lives of wounded soldiers, but was absolutely not prepared to deal with the debilitating injuries that came as a result. Now, the indirect effects from the attacks on the survival and well-being of the population are hidden. We tend to quantify everything. How many civilians were killed, how many were wounded, how many soldiers were captured, how many soldiers are wounded, but there are far more serious effects than the direct ones. And I'm going to get to that in the next slide. The problem that's making us address this is that governments lack an integrated plan to address this. Next. Okay, so what you see here is a bombed out area. This happens to be Syria, but it can just as easily be Ukraine. From this, you can see that the destruction of the basic infrastructure makes it impossible for residents to return. So we have a lot of groups working with refugees and forced migrants and how to return them back to their communities. We have people who are working to try to protect civilians, but none of it is integrated to the extent that when refugees are being sent back home, they find that there's no water, food, electricity, heat, trash removal, and medical facilities. And so it's not survivable. There's no particular coordination. So it is our contention that there must be closer collaboration between those scholars and practitioners, as well as policymakers who work with refugees and civilians, and those who work on the physical rebuilding of the infrastructure. Next. Okay, this is our team. I'm the principal investigator. I'm a political scientist. My expertise is in international law. I've written extensively on civilian casualties, particularly collateral damage. Ajinka Smith is a psychologist. Her primary area that's important here is her work with those who suffer psychological trauma, not only PTSD, but refugees and forced migrants whose physical problems are far less impactful than their psychological ones. She also studies and works very closely with those who are forced migrants, refugees, internally displaced. Kyle McDonald, who's with the Department of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences. His major contribution, which really relates to the previous slide, is that he's working with remote sensing to try to figure out how to rebuild post-war societies by trying to determine what parts of infrastructure need to be rebuilt. But again, unless this is coordinated with those who are working with refugees, those who are protecting civilians, those who are working on policy, we really can't figure out a way on how to accentuate this. Dirk Moses, he's both a historian and a political scientist. His areas of expertise are genocide and crimes against humanity, both of which are prevalent in many internal conflicts as well as international ones as well. He's also the editor of the Journal of Genocide Research. Maritza Pouros, a sociologist, deals with migration and displaced populations. She's written extensively and she works directly with these populations. And she already works in collaboration with Irina Silber, who is an anthropologist who also works on migration and has done a lot of research on how to build and rebuild post-war societies. Nancy Solar, who's in the medical school. She's working primarily on healthcare for the disadvantaged, and she also works with trauma patients. And finally, Danielle Zach, who's with the Division of Interdisciplinary Studies. She's done extensive work on human rights and civil wars, but more importantly, as I get to, she's also a specialist in developing podcasts and in seminars, which is going to be important to our project. Next. Okay, so these are our basic objectives. Number one, develop an integrated strategy to mitigate the effects of war on vulnerable populations. And I really emphasize this idea of integrated because there's a lot of work being done piecemeal by governments, international organizations, and by non-governmental organizations, but they tend to be very specialized. A group that works with refugees, one that works with soldiers, one that works with forced migrants, one that works with civilians. Without an integrated strategy, we're dealing with a competition for resources and really the lack of any kind of coordinated plan who's going to be able to rebuild destroyed societies. Then we want to build this comprehensive approach to how to rebuild towns and cities destroyed during armed conflict. This has probably been the biggest failure of governments and of international organizations. Once the war is over, their job is over, and people have to move back into communities that lack the very basics of survival. We want to determine how best to treat civilians and former soldiers who are suffering from physical and psychological effects of war. Again, not only PTSD, but how to deal with the tens of thousands of badly injured soldiers, and they lack medical facilities, including in the United States, to take care of them. And then the last part is to establish what legal agreements and government policies need to be updated, changed, or initiated. This is going to be involved drafting new treaties, multilateral treaties. It's going to be involved, as we mentioned, ultimately, we think there needs to be a new office established in the United Nations under the Secretary General that deals with the victims of war. There is no office there now. And we also believe that the United States government at home needs to establish an office on how to deal with civilians. At this point now, the United States military is very clear that they don't keep track of civilians and civilian deaths. Next. The management plan, it's three legs: research, practice, and policy. And this comes together in what's probably the core of our project. It's a multi-year, probably, more like, 5 or 6 year plan to create an international center for victims of armed conflict, which would conduct interdisciplinary research, policy analysis, and advocacy. It's what some people call a think tank, but it's not simply going to be research. We want to work very closely with practitioners from non-governmental organizations who are both on the ground, working with different vulnerable populations. We want to work with medical professionals, policymakers, and so on. And there are 3 specific parts that's going to work under the center. There'll be where we want to have a monthly podcast where the host interviews individuals from any of these different groups, non-governmental, government officials, and so on dealing with this. A seminar series where we're going to bring in people who are going to be able to work collaboratively outside of simply the CUNY and City College communities. We're going to be bringing them in. And then a policy paper series in which every member of the team is going to write papers that are directed to government, international organizations, and yes, to non-governmental organizations. I should mention that the Center for the Victims of Armed Conflict is really the primary way we're going to collaborate. All of the team members will be on a board of advisors who will run the center, and we're going to have regular meetings to discuss some of our future projects. Next. We have the milestones establishing the center, securing and setting up the office. We hope to have that set up by December 1st. We're going to begin a fellowship program. We want to bring in 2 fellows who work on these issues, but not only academics, but also practitioners and people who are in government and international organizations. So the process of recruitment, searching, hiring, we hope to be done by September 1st of 2023. The podcast should be established, we hope, by February of 2023. Symposium series, we want to start running the series beginning in February of 2023. I'm listing here some of the deliverables. The proposal has more details. The policy paper series, once we choose an editor, set up the topics, we're looking at October of 2023 for the first set of policy papers. And then the fundraising, which I'm going to discuss in a few minutes. Right now, we're going to be drafting our business plan. We're going to begin outreach to specific donors who I'll go into, and we expect to have that completed by October of 2023. Next. Team qualifications. I've already mentioned the individuals, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you can see who's going to be collaborating much closely. Maritza Poros, Irina Silber. Again, they've already been collaborating, and they're both going to integrate with the work we're doing. I'm going to work very closely with Dirk Moses, but also with Kyle McDonald. I'm just putting a couple of the pairing together. Kyle McDonald, who already works for the UN DP, which for Ukraine to determine what needs to be built there. Danielle Zach, she currently hosts a podcast called Rights Talk, and she has extensive experience. Next, please. Yinka is a co-founder of an organization created to respond to war survivors from the African diaspora. She's a staff person at the Bellevue Program for Survivors of Torture. She's done extensive work on psychological trauma, as has Nancy Solar. She studies barrier to healthcare for underserved populations, and she's currently the director of research education at the Haiti Medical Education Project. Next, please. Hey, this is a sample of Professor McDonald's work. You can see that you're using
David, how are you doing?
I'm sorry.
That's how much y'all get paid for.
Can you mute, everybody? Can you mute? Supposedly I can.
This is an example of Professor McDonald's work using remote censoring technologies to be able to determine, while the war is still going on, what kinds of rebuilding needs to be done. This is going to have to be very closely coordinated with refugee groups, with groups working with civilians, and with those who are working on the ground to reorganize the communities. Next, please. This is a graphic representation of the team. You see the overlap of the ones who are going to be working together. I already went through this, but this is the representation. Next, please. Future funding, okay. We haven't worked as a team before. This is a new project, and therefore we don't, at this point, have a track record that we can sell to foundations. So for that reason, the creation of the center is probably the most important thing we can do. Once the center is established, and we've established a track record, and we've started to produce some of the deliverables I've mentioned, we're going to use contact private foundations who support human rights projects. And these are not just out of the internet. These are ones that political science and the Colin Powell School has actually worked closely with before. Andrew Mellon, Robert Wood Johnson, Carnegie Corporation, Annie Casey, Ford Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates, Heising Simmer, MacArthur, and Rockefeller. And we are especially interested in getting, if we can, large amounts from George Soros's foundation, Open Society. His foundation has granted more than $1 billion to human rights organizations since 2010. In fact, he's given in 2010 a loan to Human Rights Watch, who I've worked with closely, $100 million. So we are bringing in a broader group, but it's a more of a social science approach. So it's different than a lot of the presentations you've seen. Our fundraising is going to be different. The way we work together will be different, but it won't be any less collaborative. And we believe that this is absolutely necessary in order to maintain and to support the vulnerable populations who are right now in distress from the 40+ armed conflicts that are being fought in the world. Next.
5 minutes.
Thank you for watching.
Unmute myself. So you said there were 40+ conflicts across the world or globally?
Yeah, 40 armed conflicts that include both interstate and civil wars in every continent.
So is there a way, I mean, can you handle everything? Is there a way that you're focusing, or how do you determine where to?
Yeah, our plan is not as a group. Yeah, that's a good question. Our plan is not as a group to go onto the ground in 40 different conflicts. The idea is that we're going to work. There are a lot of groups, practitioners who are working on the ground, primarily non-governmental organizations and United Nations agencies. They don't work together. They all work on a very focused and a very narrow set of priorities. Refugee works only work with refugees. Groups that work with internal displaced only work with them. Groups like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International work on the legal aspects of civilian targeting and the protection of civilians, et cetera, et cetera. We're hoping to be able to coordinate these actions. So it's not our position that we need to go into the ground for 40 armed conflicts. We do need to provide a center, we believe, that's going to bring together all these various groups who are already on the ground. But my emphasis is on this integrated approach. If some of the work that Professor McDonald's doing in Ukraine is successful, and I believe it already has been, we're hoping to be able to spread this, but to integrate the work where you can, through remote censoring, find exactly what is needed to rebuild the infrastructure with the groups who are going to bring refugees in. Refugee groups cannot bring refugees back if the basics of survival aren't there. So there has to be far better coordination, and it has to be integrated. The protection of civilians, which is my area, is something that's not just simply keeping civilian casualties down, it's protecting the communities and what to do when the communities get destroyed through massive bombing and so on. Again, that's where I'm going to work with Professor McDonald and some of the others.
Any other questions, comments, suggestions? So let me ask, is Kyle on the line?
He should be. I saw his name.
I am here.
Can you go into a little bit more about your sensing and what you do?
So what this is showing, we were approached, so give a little bit of background. We had a relationship with the UN development program in Ukraine through a recent activity in water resources. And after the conflict began this last year, they approached us to see if there was anything we can do. And by we, I mean I and colleagues I work with at NASA, JPL, in order to help mitigate the war effort.
Oh, just,
So-
that's the Jet Propulsion Lab.
Yeah.
Just-
What we are using here is a technology using time series imaging radar from satellites. Satellite we're using in this example is the Sentinel SAR, which is a European Space Agency instrument. And it looks at interferograms generated by the time series data to look for changes in structure. And the change in the principle is that if structure changes, then you have a change in the interferogram that indicates to something. And this system that has been developed and is applied at JPL is kind of state of the art for looking at damage related to natural disasters. But we're working with them now to try to adapt this and develop some advancement that would be able to assess ongoing damage related to conflicts, such as what's going on in Ukraine. What the UNDP in Ukraine is asking for is an assessment of where damage is occurring so that they can target areas that need to be cleared of rubble to provide access to emergency vehicles, to provide access to, the fire department going in, to medical care, things of that sort. And beyond that, there's a lot of issues they're concerned about, such as rebuilding the agricultural productivity and food security because of damage done to hard infrastructure related to food production. And if fields are sitting fallow and being not harvested because there's food, because there's crops that are there that have been planted, but people have left, well, are they not being harvested because the people have left, or there's not being harvested because there's an infrastructure issue? So those are the kinds of issues we're looking forward to solving with them. But right now we're working on some of these adaptations to remote sensing technologies to identify damage within the urban regions to hard infrastructure so that populations can be, effects on populations can be mitigated. I don't know if that gets
Yes.
your question.
Yeah, that helps. And so your team, is there overlap between these two sections?
Yeah. I mean, what you see here is a graphic representation. That's not how we're going to work together. Obviously, the work on giving support to forced migrants and refugees is directly connected to civilian infrastructure, which is directly connected to the protection of civilians, which is also directly connected, by the way, to the victims of trauma, which includes wounded soldiers. So what you see is a graphic representation. It doesn't show exactly how the work is going to be done. We were asked to do it, and so I did it. But I mean, I just want to re-emphasize, in answer to your question and what you see here, is that's why we believe setting up this center is so important. We see it as an international center. And by the way, we have not a member of the team, but we have an incredible resource who is the dean of the Colin Powell School, Andy Rich. He's written extensively on think tanks, and he actually ran one, the Truman Foundation. And so he comes with extensive experience in that. And so we're going to use him as a resource in establishing this. What we're really looking for, in this 3-year grant is to set all of this up, and it will become self-sustaining once it's established. And I really don't have any doubt that if we're successful, obviously, it depends on our work, that this thing will be a long-term self-sustaining institution. And we do plan to expand it, but we need the seed money to get this thing started, and then we will approach the foundations that I mentioned.
Any other questions, comments? If not, we're a little ahead of schedule, but I don't think that's a bad thing.
Always a good thing.
Thanks, Bruce. Okay, we'll move on to team 3.
Hello,
Yes,
can you hear me clearly?
yes.
Okay, thank you. Shall I start?
Yes.
Oh, before you start, I teach a class at 2:30, so I'm not being rude by leaving. I have to now
Oh,
go
Okay.
online to teach my class. So I'm sorry, I'm missing your presentation. I really am.
thank you.
But
Everything is being recorded. It's going to be put online, so
Good.
you'll have a chance to hear everyone.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Hands on, we're ready.
Okay, hello, everybody. Our topic is offshore wind energy and its impact to ocean, to environmental, to society. And our team has 5 CCNY people, 3 non-CCNY people. I will come back on their names and expertise later, but let's go to the background first. Next one, thank you. Next slide, yes. Okay, so offshore wind energy is green renewable energy with a huge amount of source in the nation. It's about 4 times of the current electrical grid generation capacity. Sorry. And on the right, you can see this is an example of a wind farm, which is located in Rhode Island. It is the first one, and so far is the only one in the nation. And in very recent years, there is a rapid, huge amount of investment coming into this area. For instance, at the federal level, Biden administration announced in last year, October, that 7 big wind farm will be built by 2025. And at the state level and the city level, here on the right, there's a figure on the lower corner. You see these are few projects ongoing from a city and the state. And even countywide, we had this last year, this call on offshore wind energy, renewable energy. So when we go to offshore wind energy, basically you are putting, like in this figure, you are putting many big pieces of infrastructure into ocean water, could be hundreds. So they're going to affect the ocean water and the things inside. Next one, please. And we are facing many new and crucial problems. For instance, where should we put an offshore wind farm, and how we design its infrastructure, and how much would be environmental impact, such things. For instance, on the right, you see 2 figures. On the top, you see this blue, red, white color. There are concentration of novel. This is small baby fish. And so the color reflect the location of their settlement. So the top figure shows the location before wind farm. So the lower one, you can see if you put, after you put 100 like turbines in this rectangle area, then you can see the settling location of the lava has totally changed. So indicating there's a substantial impact from offshore wind energy to ecosystem. So then here comes our framing question. So imagine if we had the knowledge and the capability to inform the planning and the building offshore wind farm, how would that look like? Next one, please. So when we try to answer this framing question, we are facing challenges. The offshore wind problem is basically multidisciplinary. It has engineering, has environmental science, has oceanography, has administrative science, even social science. And it is also multi-scale, multi-process. So on the right, there's a figure showing the problems involved at different spatial and time scales. I can explain this later as you have question. So our project is to take the challenge and develop a modeling, monitoring data system or framework to address, to evaluate the problem I was talking about. And we're going to make a study on fundamental process involved. So next one, please. Okay, this project is innovative in few aspects. The modeling monitoring data system to be built is built on our capability and also newly developed capabilities. It's going to be first of its kind, highly desired for offshore wind energy development. And this research will set up a platform, unprecedented, I would say, to study offshore wind energy problem, to help on its planning, permitting, installation, operation, such a sense. And it's going to help us to develop a coexistence of offshore wind farm with the community, with the ocean, with the ecosystem inside, many things inside. This project, I would say, it make a difference in the following aspect, topic. So the research of the topic is timely, it is multidisciplinary, and it has impact to science and engineering, and also impact stakeholder of offshore wind at the national, regional, and local level. Technically, it's built on our, we combine our capability in technical, but technically it's going to be 1 + 1, much bigger than 2. That's the result. And funding-wise, as I showed in one of the last slide, there's a huge funding coming into this area, and it is anticipated in the decade to come, such funding will continue and increase. And the benefits, this CRV research will bring new research to City College, offshore wind energy, and also it's going to help team members' own area research. So next one, please. Okay, technical approach. So in this research, we're going to make a study in 3 aspects, 3 themes, totally 7 tasks. So in the first one, we're going to make a research on hydrodynamic modeling, remote sensing, watch ocean, and we're going to do water quality evaluation. And in the second theme, we're going to do offshore wind energy impact to environmental, to ecosystem, such things. And from here, we intend to outreach to the community to increase the awareness of community on such impact. And in number 3 theme, we're going to do data-driven simulation and computer integration. So basically, in this task, the last one, a game box will be produced like a toolbox. So it can be used to visualize how offshore wind energy work, how it will affect the environmental, such things. So it can be used as a tool to educate the public, educate the society. And in this research, we're going to make a prototype study at one of the 3 locations, which you have an offshore wind project going on. Like the first one, New York Bight. The second one, Rhode Island Water, which already has a wind farm there. And the third one, there's an ongoing project there. So that's the plan. And can we get the next one? Okay, this project is built on our cohesive expertise and also newly developed capabilities in hydrodynamic modeling, remote sensing, data-driven simulation, gaming technicals. For instance, on the lower left corner, this is a remote sensing result. By remote sensing, we can find out how much is energy of a wind on ocean surface. So we can also do computer modeling, as I show on the lower right corner here. There are just a sample modeling of hydrodynamics. This modeling is made by our own unique capability. And why it is unique? Let's look at this figure. In this figure, there's a hot water discharge from a bottom ocean, from like a pipeline and small ports. The diameter of ports about 20 centimeter. So at the background, it's a circulation of ocean. So background, more or less, the flow is like this clouds motion when you watch weather forecast. This clouds rotation, and the lower one, this discharge, like it's a plume, more or less like a cigarette smoke. So there are physically they are different, and scale-wise they are different. our model can not only capture the background flow, but also resolve the local flow. So such capabilities is unique simply because until now, no other model in the community can do such a simulation. Sorry. So why we bother talk about this multi-scale multiphysics? Simply because this is a key to directly simulate and resolve the impact of offshore wind farm to the water nearby and to the water far away. That's a key point. Okay, so by such a capability of hydrodynamics and remote sensing and many other capabilities, we're going to develop this modeling, monitoring data framework, which is going to be a big step forward in technical and in research. Such a big step forward, I would say, is more than offshore wind energy. Actually, it can be equally applied, also needed in other problems. For example, there's a oil spill from a bottom ocean 10 years ago in Gulf of Mexico. Maybe some of you still remember this disaster. Okay, so let's go to the next one, please. Okay, now team and task integration. This project has 7 tasks. 1, hydrodynamic modeling, and 2, remote sensing, 3, water quality evaluation, 4, risk analysis of a wind farm to extreme wave, for example, and 5, environmental impact, 6, data-driven modeling, and 7, this computer integration. All those tasks are connected to each other as input and output for each other, and as like a kind of a building block for the whole project towards its goal, which is to evaluate the impact of offshore wind energy. For instance, this hydrodynamic modeling is going to produce a result, inform how much it would be changed, how much would be salinity and the temperature in the ocean. And such information can be used for task 5 environmental assessment. And also at the same time, hydrodynamic modeling is going to take input from remote sensing task 2 and take information from water quality evaluation task 3. And the task 7, for instance, is going to connect all tasks into a single framework. Especially one product would be something I mentioned, it's a game box. So you can play with it to see how offshore wind farm is going to work. So next one, please. Okay, here expertise. Our team has necessary expertise, even direct experience on offshore wind energy. Here here you can see the name of team members and also their task and also their corresponding expertise relevant to this project. And there's no time to go one by one, but for instance, Dr. Maidana, he has over 35-year experience on remote sensing, ocean watching, and Dr. Diomandoglu has extensive first-hand experience on water quality analysis and ocean water sampling. Dr. Chen, she is from outside. She has experience on ocean environment assessment in ocean energy and offshore energy projects. So that's our team. So please, next one. So here comes the milestone and the management. All tasks, 7 tasks, are scheduled here. Their time, their way to schedule is in a way according to the relation, like input, output each other. And in this project, we're going to have a regular project meeting, and we're going to have a presentation, annual report, publication. Plus, we're going to have an activity to outreach for external funding and community outreach. We're going to hire a part-time secretary to help on coordination of among this tasks and team members. So that's this one. Next one, please. How much time I have? I mean, I don't have.
You are 14 minutes away from 5 minutes mark. So you still have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 seconds.
I have 10 seconds?
5 minutes, 10 seconds.
Okay.
5 minutes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, external funding perspective. Here already have identified funding resource, like here. All this program, they support offshore wind energy research, especially some of them just put the offshore wind energy into their scope. They're starting to support offshore wind energy. For example, fluid mechanics program in NSF, since last year roughly, they put this offshore wind energy into this program. Actually, we have already start looking for external fund. For instance, at the same time of this CRV effort, we already put 2 proposals to above funding source. And also we're going to make a presentation on this topic in the State of Science workshop of offshore wind energy in next month. So we have a start this effort already. As an important activity during this project, we're going to seek collaboration and outreach to social science people from City College, like from Colin Powell Center, School of Education. We want to explore this possibility for external fund and also reach out to community. And also we're going to find out more people in the science side, like this ecology people and the marine science people from like our school and other schools. Moreover, when the outreach to industry developers, here are 3 companies like Osted, Equinov, and Aker. So these are main players in the offshore wind energy. For example, Osted is the builder of this offshore wind farm in Rhode Island. Actually, we have been in touch with them. I mean, actually, they like our work. They like our technical. They already support. They already put like supporting letters for proposal. We just submit. So this is what we have this part. Next one, please. Okay, just a final remark. We are now all experienced seeing this gas price up and energy crisis due to geopolitical conflicts. Then we can sense offshore energy, which is local, and offshore energy is becoming more necessary and more urgently needed. So this is the end of my talk. And thank you all for listening. And also thanks to administration for organizing this activity. And I'm open to questions. By the way, our team members, some are here. They can add, they can also answer questions also. Thank you.
So you had talked on this slide about collaborating with Colin Powell and School of Education. Have you set up those collaborations? Or are you thinking that might be in the future or what?
I think we had a discussion in the first meeting in the first meeting we talked to each other, but not later. But later we're going to outreach the community because you see the budget wise it's small and also time wise it's short. So not yet.
You said any questions, comments? So
I do have a question. So my understanding is that this is a multi-scale, multidisciplinary problem that you are trying to solve. So for your computational models, do you have the ability to update your data from the real-time weather stations or satellite sensings, whatever the source of data that you acquired, would you be able to update your model while you are doing the simulation, or you have to take one set of instance of data and then enter that as your initial condition and then do the simulation with?
Yeah, I think let's say this way. This project itself is new, and also we are short of a capability, I would say. So, I mean, our goal is first to develop some kind of infrastructure and fundamental parts like this modeling, the modeling, monitoring data framework, which can be used as a platform to move forward. So I think the final goal, like you said, ideally we could extract data from a different source like atmosphere, ocean, and many sources, and they put them together, then make our prediction and make our own study. But this will take time, I would say. But first, I think we're going to find out a way to put a framework first. And we're going to also start such a kind of things like you asked. We have like a Zitov, he's from CUNY HP Center. He can help us on this computing like equipment or things set up.
I can add a bit to that. Part of the exercise is to find low resolution alternatives to the high dimensional hydrodynamic modeling using machine learning and data science. So this is where if you have those models built up, which are an alternative to the fluid mechanics models, then these new AI or data science models can be fed in with new information that can be coming from either weather stations or satellites, and that model can be updated on a real time. So part of the exercise is to actually build up a capability like that.
And from what I heard, it seems to be at least initially focused on the fluid portion of it or the environmental information aspect of it. Are you also looking into the structural portion of it for the problem?
Yeah, let's say this way. Can we go to one of the slides showing the this diagram, like this?
Which one?
The one after. One after, I think. Well, yes, this one, yes. You see, from here, well, after we have the simulation from hydrodynamics, and then we're going to continue from here, we're going to produce wave, force, loads, everything at one farm. So that case, we're going to directly tell structure people how much load or impact from the ocean. So we have a collaborator, Galiska, he's at Princeton, he's a structure person, and we have been collaborating on this part. So that's the things, and we're going to move forward. But how much we can forward, I think this is I think first we're going to make some sample simulation and demonstration case first.
Okay. One more question, if you don't mind. So will your effort including the simulation of the wind blades, the turbines?
Let's say this way. Good question. I would say this is a very complex thing, and our focus would be first at the stage we're going to focus on ocean part first. So ocean, you have a maritime side, you have like a navigation and many things like a ecosystem. So offshore, I mean, one part we're going to take some kind of information from atmospheric science and their modeling result as input. So wind blade is part. We don't, at this moment, we don't want to directly do that. And I think that's, many people are doing it. It's not new, it's kind of something result we can utilize already. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? This team. All right, so let me just say thank you to the first 4 teams that presented. Our next set of presentations will include teams 5 through 8, and that's scheduled for the end of July, Wednesday the 27th, again from 1 to 3 p.m. I think, is that all I'm supposed to say, Alan? Is there anything else I need to convey?
I think you want to ask the CRC members
Yes.
to stay on.
Yes, so if there's nothing else that we need for the the general presentations, or if the CCNY community have no other questions. Oh, the other thing I did want to say is that the time frame is that we're trying to make these decisions by the middle to the end of August. So after this 27th presentation, give the CRC time to come together and make the recommendations. But remember, the decisions are made by the provost and the president. So we'll talk more about this after the 27th, July 27th. So thank you. And if the CRC members can just hang on for a couple of minutes, then we'll be finished.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Rose, do I need to stay on?
I think you do.
Okay.
So I just want to ask if there are any questions, any
Just 1 second.
concerns?
Some presenter hasn't signed off yet.
Like, oh, wow. John may not be there.
Will you be able to?
We have 3.
Chi-Chen, welcome, Shi. We're just wrapping up now.
I'm sorry, so I clicked the wrong button.
Okay, goodbye.
Sorry, bye-bye.
Okay, so questions about the procedure. So let me just try to go over it quickly. You guys should have a template that we're asking you to fill out for each one of the teams. There are 8 teams. If you are a participant on any team, we say you have a conflict with that team and do not evaluate that team, but you can evaluate the other teams. Everyone on the CRC is a voting member. So we are all participating in the recommendation from the CRC. Questions, anything else? The time frame, time frame is after the 27th, after the second presentation. We'd like to have those templates back by, I believe the date is the 31st, by July 31st. If we see agreement, then we'll let everybody know the results of your templates after you've submitted your templates. If there's discrepancy, if there's distribution, we may have to come together and try to iron that out. But let's see what we get in terms of recommendations from the CRC. I think we said we would tentatively try to schedule a meeting. Help me out. Yvette is not here. Alan, did we have a date for a tentative CRC come together if we needed to? It was August. We'll send it around. We'll send it around as a tentative. Oh, it was the Wednesday before this classes start.
Oh, then
It will be the 24th then.
24th.
August 24th, Wednesday.
24th.
I would anticipate that being very difficult for deans to do. That's right before when we're in the midst of the very last stages of registration.
So we're just hoping that we have consensus here.
Rose, can I confirm, or Alan, or both, that you will upload the recording from today's presentations and the slides and all that? Did you send the link already for the?
So Araceli, is it possible to stop recording right now? I don't think we need to have this recorded.
Okay, hold on a second.
So yes, this